This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's CAS, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one. You look the same as you did last time, Roscoe.
I thought about changing shirts, but whatever, dude.
Yeah, whatever.
You guys are getting to see how the sausage is made.
That's right. All right,
marathon sessions
back.
here.
We're going to do, Roscoe's got some exciting stuff going on in February, so we're going to jump into, we wanted to do a episode on balance. We talk a lot about balance and the importance of balance, but I don't know that we've really kind of gotten into maybe some tips and tricks. I think it's a little difficult to throw out a single thing that'll work because we're all a little bit different. We all probably require a little bit of different types of self-care. Self-care can look differently for us. The amount of time that we need in order to be able to recharge our batteries probably varies person to person just based on kind of how you're built and maybe some of the other skills that you have or have not built that allow you to be a little more adaptive or flexible and kind of bounce with things a little easier. But we thought it'd be good to take an hour and talk about just balancing work, family, and self-care. So that's,
I think the steps, regardless of who you are, what your circumstances, I think the steps and the ingredients are probably really close to the same. It's, how much you might have to devote to one versus the other. But, as we start to go through it, and you start to kind of build a checklist of these items, I would venture to guess that for most people, they're going to be very similar.
Yeah, I think the application probably just varies, right? So
some people are going to be stronger in some areas than others, but the focus items, I think, would probably largely remain the same.
Yeah, so I pulled up some statistics for this one just out of
yay, nerdage.
Yeah, morbid curiosity, but so some baseline statistics are 72% of employees consider work-life balance a crucial factor in job satisfaction.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what that really means or what that entails, but I guess we'll get into it. But this is one that I thought was really interesting. Only 55% of Americans use all their paid vacation time or days.
Bro.
That's from the Labor Bureau of Statistics. 55% Americans, so just barely over half of us.
Well, now hold up. Are they taking into account the guys who sell that leave back and get the money for it?
I don't know exactly. It's just a statistic that they had on the website, so I don't know if it takes into account all those factors. But they did have a statistic on that said only 55% of Americans use all their paid vacation days in a given year.
That's terrible. You guys are failing.
Yeah,
take your vacation, man.
And parents spend an average of 2.5 hours a day with their children on work days. So not a lot of time with the kiddos. And I would wonder if it's even that high depending on how old your kids are. Because I know when my kids were in high school and stuff, man, and they're practicing until 6 or 7 at night. I mean, or they're just in their room gaming or studying or doing whatever. I think it becomes even less. But I think the important piece to point out in all that is you get that finite time with them when they're little, and that's the time you got to take advantage of. Because as they get older, they don't need it as much.
Well, that's a good lesson too, certainly. And I know you and I both have stories of times that we failed at that, prioritizing the wrong thing, which I know we'll get into. But funny, I was having this discussion with a lady last night who has been a career. She spent her career in education. And she was going off about how homeschooling is it's totally crushing the education system right now. And I really wanted to kind of push back and get into the conversation, but it wasn't the time or place. It was.
In what way was she saying it's crushing the education system? Like,
because her argument on her side was that parents aren't trained educators.
They're not equipped. Yeah.
They're not trained educators to be able to break down the minutia of all of the various topics, reading, writing, arithmetic, social studies, physical education, all that stuff, which could be a valid argument for sure, man. But, I don't know. I really wanted to get into that with her, and I might one day, because I have some questions and I have some comments about, not to get political or anything, but the Department of Education and how, things aren't working necessarily the way that we envisioned them to. And for centuries, millennia, we didn't have a Department of Education. We didn't have a structured school environment, and things worked out pretty good. You hit a certain, Ben Franklin, man, he got 12 years old and he went and did an apprenticeship for 5 years, and he ended up being one of the most famous printers and writers out there, so I could probably make some decent arguments on the education piece. But on the flip side of that, or on the kind of going with what you're talking about spending time with your kids, it wasn't too long ago that parents spent a lot of time with their kids, even before, up to and probably including the nuclear family and all that shit. But, like even when I was growing up, man, I went to school and got an education and all that shit at an academy or a high school. But my mom just told me stories that I didn't know about my dad calling the principal, asking to let me out of school so that I could go help on the farm.
No.
And that was life, man. And I mean, look back into the early 1900s, the 1800s, the 1700s, and all this farming and everything. And like the kids worked the house that, you spent all day, every day with your parents and with your very close circle of people. So 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah.
Whew, man. And this becomes the ultimate question. Like, if you're spending 2.5 hours a day with your kids, who's spending the other 21.5 hours with them? Yeah. What are they doing? Who are their influences? Where are they getting that? Video games, social media, school, and their friends and their teachers. I mean, it certainly isn't you. So if you're only willing to put in 2.5 hours a day to influence your kids, how do you maintain any credibility to be able to bitch about the outcome on the back end?
That's right.
Sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but
that's okay. So let's talk work first, just if we're talking about balance, because I think you can break this down not into just how do I balance the three things together, but then also how do I find balance in each of those kind of three domains, if you will, right? So balance at work management. What are some techniques or things that you used, to kind of balance how you did things at work so that you could show up and be effective? And
yeah, well, it's hard to talk about these things as silos because they're all knotted together.
Well, we'll weave them. We can weave them for sure.
Yeah, and so the first thing is you have to be mentally and physically prepared for whatever it is you're tasked with, and for us, maybe it was a high pressure situation. I just told a story the other day to some people about my mission commander upgrade, and that was like a 16-hour day of just fucking sweat and stress.
Yeah,
it was like 4 monsters, a can and a half of Skull, and a Snickers bar, standing in front of people, wiping sweat from my brow for fucking 16 hours.
Yeah,
and now, granted, a lot of people don't get put in those kinds of situations, but, leading up to that point, had to try to get a good night's sleep. I had to, try to get a good meal in the day before because I knew that day was going to be just fucking brutal, right? And, take anyone who's gone to weapons school or gone through any kind of crucible like an upgrade, an instructor upgrade or a mission commander upgrade or something like that. And, I think that preparation beforehand set you up for success on the back end.
Yeah,
so that would be probably step one, is take care of yourself, the days and weeks leading up to that.
Yeah, well, and I think part of that plays into, if we want to weave it together a little bit, like I think you've got to be a little boundaried between the time that you set aside for what you need to do at work and then your own personal time.
100%. Yeah.
So if you're the kind of person that, finds value or gets something out of working out in the morning, maybe that gives you clear headspace to go into work with, or maybe that's a great time for you. I know, like running for me, and you've talked about even just sometimes when you go for walks or runs, right? It's like set aside time to focus on a specific task or issue. You'll get ideas around the writing therapy, that you're doing, or or if there's something going on at work. A lot of times I would find resolution because I can just kind of, while I'm exercising, my mind can go other places. I don't have any other distraction at that time.
Yeah. There's another piece to that too that can't go overlooked, and it's, if you're having these kinds of days where they're super stressful and they're very intense, being able to go and do something that's very difficult, not associated with that, takes your mind off of that for a little bit, and it gives you clarity at some point, and I've used the example of running the half marathon through the white tanks up here, where for 2.5 hours, I was just focused on where my foot landed on the earth, and everything else melted away. And at the end of that, man, dude, you just feel great. Like the whole world just comes into better perspective for you when you can do something like that.
Yeah, and realize too that this may be an exploratory process for you. Like if you've never really thought about these things, or if you're a younger man for that matter, and you haven't really ever thought about this stuff, or there may be a process involved with you kind of figuring out what the best ways, what the things are that you need to do that kind of sets you up for success. I know for me, having like 20 or 30 minutes of just kind of quiet in the morning can make a huge difference to the output that I have.
Super
in a day,
valuable,
right?
Yeah.
Because it gives me a second to kind of collect my thoughts, get myself oriented, kind of prioritize in my mind what the tasks are for the day, know, and then that way when I step in the door, dude, I can go to task.
And the counter argument to that, CAS, is going to be somebody's going to say, well, I don't have 30 minutes in the beginning of my day. I have to wake up and get to work real quick, or I have to wake up and get all my kids ready, and then I have to get myself ready, and then I have to take them to school, and the busyness and all that. Man, here's a technique, and this is what I do: is I put on an audiobook or a podcast or something on my headphones on my drive to work, and that's a little bit of an opportunity to just kind of relax, man, and not think about that day that's coming up, and not think about the other projects that I'm working on in my life, or the home repairs or anything. I just get into the story that I'm listening to, and it gives me something else to focus on, and that clears the palette for everything else.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is going to be different for everybody, right? There's going to be different techniques that are going to work for you individually that kind of help you free up some of that headspace. But you just have to try some things and figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
For me, even when it was a busy time and it was, I got to get up, got to get the kids ready, got to get them to school before I roll into the squadron because my wife was working or whatever. Guess what, dude? I'm just going to wake up 30 minutes earlier so that I have that time, because I knew that was important for me. So,
well, you find that things are a trade-off too sometimes.
They can be.
If you're going into a day that's going to require a lot of energy and a lot of output, maybe waking up 30 minutes earlier takes away from your recharge.
It depends.
And so you have to, and this God dang, man, this
is why this is hard.
But here's the knot, right? Is all this shit starts with knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's all self-inspection.
For me, I know that I can, as soon as my alarm goes off, the best thing that I can do is put my feet on the floor. And that starts my day, man. If I lay there and lollygag, by the way, there's a word for that. It'll come to me in a second. It's an old Irish word. Herkle-durkle. That's the word for laying in bed and not getting up. So you're just laying there in bed awake, and the covers are warm, and you're just kind of, drifting a little bit. It's called herkle-durkle. So anyways, there's your fun, useless fact for the day.
Nice.
But dude, like, if you have one of these days, or maybe it's the day, maybe it's job interview day, and you've been stressing about this for a while. Maybe waking up early in the morning takes away the charge on your batteries, and you won't perform as well. And if you know that about yourself, man, get the extra 30 minutes of sleep. Drink your coffee on the way to work instead of sitting there staring out the window.
Yep. Again, it just comes back down to knowing yourself and knowing what 100%. You need for you, right? So
100%.
I think another technique for work too is to use time blocking techniques so that you can do focused work at times, right? So
organize your day.
Yep. You got to organize your day. So, and you got to set specific time aside if you've got a project that you're working on where you can give all your attention and focus to that, right? So, if you have routine meetings or whatever, what days are probably better than others that you can block out time. And you don't need to go crazy with it. You don't need to go, well, I'm going to block out the whole day, because guess what? You're not going to be able to focus on the whole day. It's going to be tough to do, right? But you may be able to block out a couple hours, an hour or two here or there, where you can just, no kidding, that's the time that I'm going to set aside, and there's nothing else that I'm going to work on. I'm just going to focus in on whatever that task is that I've got to get work done around.
Well, I would throw in there too that variety helps a little bit.
Yeah,
Like
it does.
blocking off an entire day to work on one single task. I would venture to guess that there's probably some science out there that would back this up and say you're better off taking several days and chunking it a little bit more.
Yep.
Work for a couple hours Monday through Friday versus 8 hours on Monday.
Absolutely.
On this one thing, and that helps keep your ideas fresh and keeps
It
you
does.
rolling. And
well, it lets you ruminate too, right? It lets you ruminate on things that
Yeah.
may allow you some space and time to come up with, oh shoot, there's a contingency that I didn't think about when I was on the treadmill this morning. So I'm gonna roll that into the plan next time I work on it or whatever. Excuse me. Yeah, and just remember too, like I'm a fan of open door policies and leadership as far as, people should have the freedom to come and ask you questions if they need to, but that doesn't mean you can't close your door. There were plenty of times as a DOR commander where if I just needed some time not to be interrupted, then the door gets closed, right? And, people can knock and I can make a decision at that point as to whether or not it's something that's pertinent enough that I need to deal with it right now, or it can wait for 30 minutes until I'm done doing what I'm trying to get done. So
when you brought that up, when you said, chunking out your day, or I had outlining your day a little bit, I had one step before that, and it was preparation the day before or the week before. If you know this thing is coming up, if you know interview day is coming up, maybe spend a few minutes in the couple of days leading up to that to, make sure that you've mapped out your route to work so you won't be late. Make sure that you've set a couple of alarms so that you get up. Make sure that you've ironed your clothes and laid them out. So the preparation, I think, is a big key to success in a lot of ways. Because when it comes down to, we talk about when we talk about the plan, posture, perform model that we use, you plan these things out and then you posture it by gathering up all the resources that you need. And then you're able to execute with very little worries at the end. And for like that day that I was talking about, the 16-hour day, I had spent weeks preparing for that mentally and physically. And, that night before I went to bed, my clothes were laid out on the nightstand or on the bathroom vanity. Like I had everything postured there. My briefing guides were already in my bag, sitting right by the door, so I wouldn't forget them. So it's those little things, these little organizational skills, a couple of days prior that can help you on the day of.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into what I was going to talk about too, which is if you have the ability or time to get ahead. Like don't
for sure.
put things off that can be worked on today for tomorrow, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. It's the same thing that we've talked about before, where if you procrastinate, and you go, well, I'll have a whole bunch of time tomorrow because there's nothing on the book for tomorrow. Well, guess what? Something's going to happen that's going to take up most of your time tomorrow, and now you're going to be behind the eight ball. And that's the posture piece, right? The preparing and posturing ahead of time so that you don't have to jump through hoops at the last minute to try to get done what you're going to get done and then turn it in and figure your product.
Well, you know what, man? I mean, I'm working on something right now that it's a pretty massive project that I'm working on. And, over the last 90 days or so, I could have probably sat down and got it done in about 30 days, but I've enjoyed giving it some time to breathe a little bit, take a couple of days off, come back and revisit. I think it makes it a little more fresh on my mind. But I had a target and I had a goal. And the reason that I set that was because I had already set aside some time to be able to really devote to it. And, an example that I use is a couple of years ago, I was writing a book and I knew that camping season was coming up. Camping season's right around the corner, right? So I get all my ideas down and I get my outlines done for how I'm going to put this thing together, knowing that when I get up to my campsite, dude, I've got all day to just sit there. There's no distractions. Katie's reading a book in the shade over here and I'm sunbathing, just writing my book. And I knew that was coming. So, not to push back on what you were saying, but it's okay if you've got that, if that's part of your model, if that's part of your plan and your process, that's perfectly fine. I think what you were talking about more of this just procrastination of like, I'll just get to it tomorrow.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Planning a day where you're going to do that is different than just saying, fuck it, I'll do it tomorrow.
Agreed. So that's my point, is if you have time in the day to work on something and get ahead, then do that, right? I mean, you also negotiated a timeline that you knew was going to give you the benefit of being able to have the space you needed to a certain extent to kind of maneuver in that way. for the project you're working on too. So that's another thing to think about, right? If sometimes we can't negotiate a deadline, but if you can negotiate a deadline and you can be realistic and you know these things about yourself, you may be able to negotiate a timeline that affords you the opportunity to get enough time to devote to the task that you know you're going to put in a really good product. So
but what's that called? That's called preparation and planning.
It is,
right? That's laying out your timeline ahead of time, and then executing on that timeline.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then learning to delegate too and say no when it's appropriate or necessary.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, delegation's important, especially as you get into leadership roles, because you can't do it all. And the last thing you want to do is be the micromanaging boss that's in everybody's chili all the time. You got to trust your people at some point and recognize that they may not do everything the way that you would do it, but it's going to get to the same end result, and that's what matters. And then there's learning in that process for them too. And then sometimes you got to say no. Sometimes you got to say, you know what, I can't do that. It's too much. Or, I mean, dude, when I was the commander in the 425th, we'd get taskers from the group or the wing sometimes, and I'd call the OG and I'd be like, no, you got 7 other squadrons on here that have 30 plus USAF IPs.
Yeah, we got 4.
I've got 5. We're not doing this. Like, no.
Yeah.
Fine, task it to another squadron. My guys don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I would push back hard on some of those things, unless it was something that I needed somebody to do so that I could get a feather in their cap because I had a plan for them to move forward.
Yeah, sure, but that's a different discussion. That's well, that's a leadership episode. I was going to throw something out there that I know that we've talked about this, and I'm pretty sure that I remember you throwing some stats out here at some point on how many minutes a day are wasted by workers playing on their phones and social media and that kind of shit. So what I was going to say is have a little self-discipline to put your fucking phone down.
Yeah.
Get off of the social media, stop dead scrolling and shit. And I think you'd be surprised at how productive you can be if you just eliminate some of these distractions. And if you're incapable of having your phone sitting on your desk and not looking at every fucking notification bell that turns on or that comes up, first of all, turn all your notifications off.
Yeah.
Second of all, leave your phone in your car for an hour, right? No distractions. Get rid of that stuff. One of my favorite things to do was to go in the vault. It still is. To go down into the vault. Can't take your fucking phone in there, man.
The vault was
You're
awesome.
sitting there listening to the oldie goldie station on the radio, and you can actually get a lot of shit done.
That's right. Yep. And that's part of setting aside that dedicated time, right? So that you can just focus in without the distractions. No, those are all great things, man.
Good shit.
What about family time?
Man, that's a challenge. And my little rant earlier, kind of alluded to it. And guys, I've fucked this up wholesale. When I was a young man trying to raise a family and trying to balance all these things, studying for promotion, working a full-time job, going to school, taking a full load of classes, trying to be a scout leader for my kid, and 2 little toddlers running around the house. Like, it gets fucking busy, man.
Yeah,
it's hard, and one of the things that I think even Katie will say this, to a degree, right? When I was home, I tried to be home. I tried to leave Roscoe in the truck as much as I could.
Yeah.
And just be dad. When I walked in, and I didn't always do it. I didn't always win that. I fucked it up probably more than I got it right, but I tried. And there were times, like I can remember in flight school, sitting there doing low-level charts, drawing all my low-level charts, bouncing my kid on my knee. And he doesn't know what I'm doing. He's coloring.
Yeah.
And he thinks that dad's coloring too.
It's arts and crafts time.
Yeah, he's a year old, so he was having a good time. And, I'm sure to him, there was a little bit of a bond of, hey, we're coloring on this piece of paper. But to me, it was like work. So was it the right thing to do? I don't know. But I certainly tried.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I tried to always leave work at work for the most part. I mean, and obviously there's going to be times where it follows you, where there's things that kind of come home with you. But as much as you can, you got to learn how to compartmentalize that stuff because what you don't want to do is be distracted at home. You have to be intentional. If we're only getting a couple hours a day during the weekdays with our kids, that time is invaluable and you're going to miss out on a lot of stuff if you don't take advantage of it. So I think it's important to be, 1, intentional, and 2, to try to schedule routine and activities to the max extent that you can, and it can be something as simple as we're going to have dinner together every night,
Yeah.
and maybe you can't do every night. Maybe it's, hey, Friday night's pizza night, and we're going to sit down and
Yep.
we're going to have dinner. We're going to talk, catch up with everybody's week, see how everybody's doing, and watch a movie together, right? Or play games. Or, I mean, fuck, man, we used to sit down and play, get on the Switch with the kids and do Mario Kart and stuff like that, and it's not, it's not some like deep introspective, meaningful time that we're spending, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. And we're sitting there razzing each other and rooting
talking
and
shit,
laughing and fucking, it's fun, man. Right.
I used to do that with Call of Duty with the kids, and I suck at Call of Duty. Like, I'm terrible at it, but I'd go in there and I'd let them kill me 30 times in a match, and they're all talking shit about, oh, I totally stuck a grenade on your head. And,
yeah,
but it was those kinds of things, that we still laugh about now that my kids are grown, and for the people out there that are listening that have little kids, let me tell you, man, it goes by fucking fast.
It goes by really fast.
You're going to blink and they're going to be teenagers, and they're not going to talk to you for about 6 or 7 years. And then when they get to be in their 20s, they'll come back and it'll be fun again. But man, Katie and I still talk about how quick it went by.
Yeah.
And go back to what I was saying earlier, man. If you're not influencing your kids, who is?
Yeah.
There's going to be a time where their football team or their friends on the weekends are having a much larger influence on their life than you are.
Yeah.
So you got to take advantage of the time that you have, for sure.
Yeah. And again, I think just being intentional and trying to find ways to set aside specific times to have connection with one another. Like, we used to do dinner all the time during the week, and dinner was also like a no phone time too, right? So nobody's,
always
daughter can't be there on the texting with all her friends. So everybody put your phones down. We're going to take 30, 45 minutes. We're going to have dinner together.
Yep.
We're going to talk to each other. We're going to laugh, see how everybody's doing, and even in relationships, like with Alicia, we try to do weekly check-ins that's a little more flexible and fluid, right? We don't have a specific time or day that we do it. It's just, it may be on one of the days that we have off together in the morning. We'll be sitting there having coffee and you go, you want to go outside and sit by the fire for a few minutes and do a check-in? And we do. And we talk about, hey, here's what I really appreciated about you from you this week, and, here's a place where I feel like I fell short. Can you tell me if that's true, or is that a misunderstanding on my part? We learn so much about each other and our relationship with each other and how to show up for each other by just having these really simple conversations that don't take more than 15, 20 minutes most of the time,
Yeah.
So, and it's a good way to it's a ritual of connection for us that just allows us to continue to work on our relationship, to carve out time on a regular basis where we can bring things to one another to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's powerful, man. And when you get it into a routine, it doesn't take a lot of time or effort, really, to be honest with you.
The danger, that's awesome, dude. But I would caution some listeners. I would just throw this out there that the danger with routine is complacency.
That's true.
And sometimes going through the motions is, like, we experience this when we talk about physical fitness, showing up and going through the motions, dude, you still showed up, right? And it's about that consistency.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a couple of times where you're not going in there and, you're not going to be the Rock every day that you go into the gym. Some days you're going to be, Cartman from South Park, but that's okay. You showed up, you went through the motions, and I think the same thing when you're talking about, family life. Sometimes, man, I can remember sometimes being physically present, but mentally somewhere else.
Yes.
We're having dinner. I'm there. I'm listening to the kids laugh,
really
but I'm thinking about the briefing tomorrow, or whatever it is, the deployment that's coming up, or something like that. So there is a little bit of a caution. One thing that Katie and I have committed to in 2025 is one night a week is date night. And sometimes it's go down to the food truck and get a taco. Some nights it's, go get dinner and go watch a movie, or go listen to some live music like we did last night, so trying to make that part of, the every week, something to look forward to, something to get us out of the house and put a collared shirt on, little things like that. And then for the kids, man, I tell you, there's so much value, I think. This is an opinion, but you said it. There's so much value in when you do these family events, put those fucking phones in the glove box, man. Put them in a lockbox. Throw them out on the front porch, something. And I'll tell you where the payoff is. The payoff is now that my kids are in their 20s, when we go out to eat, nobody takes their phones out, dude. And we sit there and have a great time.
Well, it's
and
like
a lot of times now, like Katie gets onto me sometimes because I'm not really engaging in the conversations, because I just kind of sit back with my arms crossed and I just enjoy the show.
Yeah.
Because the brothers get to go and edit with each other, and they're talking smack about whatever it is they're talking smack about, and it's a comedy show, and sometimes I just enjoy watching it.
Yeah, it's that distraction-free time, right? And I think that it's important too to, plan some events that are, out in the future, whether it's a weekend trip somewhere or going camping, or it doesn't have to be anything expensive necessarily or anything big. But when you have these events that you're going to go do together, it's something that everybody's looking forward to. There's it gets amplified because there's excitement behind it. It's just something that people are looking forward to. And then, those are ways that when you go out and do those things, man, those are opportunities to build memories together, and then and then, 10 years down the road, you're sitting with them at the, the bar or whatever, and everybody's gathered around and you're like, remember that fucking time we went camping that one weekend and so-and-so did this? And I mean, right. That's where look for opportunities and ways, and they can be inexpensive ways even to build memories with each other, because that's where the value's at.
Yeah, and you inadvertently hit on something in there, and it was coping with stress, right? Because not all stress is bad stress, but stress is still stress.
Yeah.
And I'll use this example of this trip that Katie and I have coming up. Super excited, been looking forward to it for a while. Like, it's gonna be baller, dude. But it's a tremendous amount of stress organizing everything and planning itineraries and getting tickets and finding hotel rooms and all that, and thankfully she bears most of the burden for that. But for both of us, it's been a time suck and an energy suck, just trying to do this so that when we get there, man, we can just enjoy it. And one of the things that I think, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think as the husband, the dad, the man in the family, I take the burden of kind of the control piece in a lot of ways. I typically drive everywhere we go. I'm typically the one that interfaces with most things and, has the situational awareness around everybody. But dude, this is going to be so much fun because I get to be a tourist.
Yeah.
I told Katie, I said, I don't want to drive anywhere. I don't want to be responsible for anything. I just want to look out the fucking window, and really enjoy it. So, what I was going to say though is, getting back to the stress piece of it, is through these things that you're dealing with your family, there's going to be stressful times. And I think as a family, if you can find coping mechanisms for that stress, then I think everybody benefits from that. And maybe it is everybody, hey, we're going to go over to the park on Saturday afternoon. Yeah. And just get some fresh air and sunshine, throw the baseball around, or we're going to go hiking. Let's go camping or four-wheeling for the weekend. Some little things like that to just kind of blow some steam off, go shoot guns. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and sometimes when I had a really good friend of mine that I met over in Hawaii, well, it was Jernigan who we had on the podcast a while back. And one thing that he used to do with his kids is like they would get ready to go somewhere, and they were older, they were teenage years. But he always called them his crack research team, because he would call them and go, all right, this is what we're going to go do. 1, 2, 3, go. And they would get online and they would find like all these different things that they might want to do when they went, and that just built this level of excitement, but it also alleviated him and his wife from having to find a bunch of stuff.
Well, that's valid. That's a stress relief.
So it was a bit of a stress relief.
It also got everybody invested in it.
But it got them invested in it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks and techniques out there for ways that you can manage that. But at the end of the day, too, I think the biggest piece of it, and we've mentioned this on the podcast as well, is just that just being present. Try to be present in the moment as much as you can when you're home, because if you let the distractions of the day or distractions from work follow you, it's hard to be present in the moment, and you're going to miss You're not just going to miss things, but you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to miss opportunities to have influence. You're going to miss opportunities to read body language if one of the kids is having a bad day, and an opportunity to maybe sit down and have a really meaningful conversation with them, or even a place where you can provide some instruction in their life that's going to be beneficial to them down the road. Like, you miss things when you're not present.
Well, you only have a moment to enjoy this moment.
Yeah.
And I sucked at that when I was younger.
I did too.
I think I'm getting better at it now, being able to see those moments that you can't recreate, that are once in a lifetime kind of moments. And like Tyler's police academy graduation. Katie started laughing at me because right in the middle of the ceremony, I jumped up and I ran to the center of the room and like slid like I was going to the third base with my camera up to get the picture right up front of him getting his diploma.
That's cool.
Right. And the whole room is probably looking at me like, who the fuck, what the fuck just happened here? A giant redneck just ran through and slid across the room, but that's one of those moments that will never, ever happen again.
Yeah.
And I think I'm getting better at seeing those. But when I was a young man, I was, because I was so wrapped up in the career progression and doing my own thing that I missed a lot of those type of deals.
Yeah,
I wish I would have been better at that.
And I think that's common. I think it's common in your younger, in your 20s and your 30s to be very focused on, developing skills around your career and getting ahead, so take the lessons, that we're trying to throw out there. And, it doesn't mean that you can't still pursue those things and build skills around those things and still achieve those dreams and objectives. But when you're home, try to find that balance, right? Just try to find that ability to compartmentalize and be intentional with your time at home and be present.
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult.
It is. Life likes to pull us in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, and like I think it was on the last show we were talking about. It's difficult, but you get better at it. I think the more reps you take, the more swings at the bat, the more times you make contact with the ball. And
it's a learning
I
process.
use the example of moving. Moving always sucks. Moving is always difficult, but you do it enough times, you get better at it. You create these little checklists, or you kind of know what's coming. You have some anticipation for the next day or the next thing or whatever. And it doesn't make it any easier necessarily, but you get a little bit better at it over time. And this is not that much different.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Then it goes into self-care, so,
well, reference my discussion earlier about my mission commander day, 4 Monster drinks, a can and a half of Skull, and a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
How was I doing on self-care?
Well, but you know what, though? If we're honest, you're going to have days like that, right? You're going to have days where you just have to go to task and you got to get it done, and you got to put the time in and the effort in, and there's not a lot of room for anything else. I mean, that's part of life as well. But to the max extent that you can, and we've hit on this a little bit already with just, being introspective and understanding what you need. What are the things that you need to recharge your batteries? What are the things that you can do that kind of sets you up for success going into the next day or the next week? It may be planning out your week, the week ahead, right? And, it can be as easy as some time management and building a calendar and kind of tracking what you're doing day to day and where you can fit things in and how, or, you may get really, if you have the ability to be very specific, you could go, hey, I'm going to go to the gym in the morning, and 5:30 to 7 is my time, and I'm going to get to work at 8. And that frees me up so that when I get home, I don't have to worry about any of my other self-care stuff. Or you have to build a routine. You have to get disciplined in that routine. You got to try some things to see what works. But you do have to build, and it's hard too, right? Because we talk about these phases of life. There's going to be days where you don't get to, right? Something's going to come up. Something's going to get in the way. Yeah. But to the max extent possible, you have to find ways to afford yourself some personal time to do some do some activities that you like, whatever that is for you, right? Whatever you need to do to decompress at the end of the day.
Well, I think you look for consistency over time.
Yeah.
And knowing that, what was it? Doc John said he's got like an 80% rule, try to get to the gym 5 times a week. If I miss one, you know what? I still went 4. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll try not to miss 2 days in a row. I'll try to get back on it next week. So consistency over time. And as you were talking there, I was just thinking about, the knot that we keep tying on the show here. And we talk about comfort and being uncomfortable and pushing that line out a little bit more every day. Well, you know something, what that does inadvertently is it lets you know what your limits are.
Yeah.
And so, you know what, when I've got a day where I'm facing something like in the example that I used, I know that that day is going to suck. But you know what? I've pushed that boundary so many times that I know that my body can take it. I know that mentally and physically and emotionally, I can sustain this for 16 hours. Now, at the end of that, I'm probably just going to pour myself into my truck. But through repetition and through time of constantly bumping out that comfort zone barrier just a little bit more and a little bit more and crossing that line, I knew that I could handle it. I can suck it up for one day, you know?
Yeah. You've said consistency a couple of times now, and I think that that's so important because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like if you want to make a New Year's resolution, make it being consistent in 2025.
Be consistent.
Yeah.
That's
be
a good
consistent.
one. Yeah.
You know, whether that's at work, whether that's going to the gym, whether that's, you know, with your family, being present, being intentional. Try to find ways in your life to be very consistent in your routine and your patterns and what you do.
Yeah.
You know, align those things with your personal value system and you'll be winning, man. You'll be getting ahead. Not every day is going to be the best day. Not every day is always going to work out the way you think it's going to. But that's okay. Like you're saying, if we're consistent about it, we'll find ways to make all of that work. So but back to what I was saying is just, you know, find some time for personal activities. You got to be able to do things that you're going to be able to enjoy, you know, that give you the headspace that you need to kind of recage, recharge. And I've talked about that before with me as an introvert. You know, I do not recharge by going out and spending a bunch of time in big groups of people having small talk on the weekends. That's not me. Extroverts do. I need quiet time. I need time alone. And not necessarily by myself. Time with my wife is fine too, right? Sometimes it doesn't have necessarily mean that I have to be by myself, but I need that quiet space and time to kind of recharge my batteries to get through the next week. I think maintaining a consistent sleep schedule, if you can, is really important.
Yeah, that's valid.
If you don't think it is, wait till you have your first child, and you'll see how fucking important it is to your stability and mental health.
That's the stumping your pinky toe analogy, right? Is you never realize how important your pinky toe is until you can't use your fucking pinky toe.
Yeah, it is.
You know? And you never realize how valuable sleep is until you don't get any.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're in a consistent pattern of, you know, scrolling on your phone for an hour after you crawl into bed instead of getting that extra 45 minutes of sleep, like maybe knock that off. You know, or find some other way to wind down before you actually hit the sheets. But yeah, try to have a consistent sleep schedule if you can, because it's really important just for clarity, for focus, you know, endurance, mental fortitude, physical endurance, all of it. It's hard to have a good workout when you're crushed. It's, you know, it's hard to stay focused at work when you're crushed. It's important.
Well, what did you tell me the other day, man? You were kind of complaining about some long days that you had strung together, you know, and you said, man, it's just so hard to get a good workout in.
It is.
You know, you come in from a long day and you're just dog tired and you eat and you know, you go to the gym for like 30 minutes and you're just kind of going through the motions. But dude, that's still consistency, man. You're still showing up. You're still prioritizing that part, you know, and you get that little bit of endorphin rush, you get a little dopamine hit, you go take a shower, and now you kind of feel good, you got a little pump, and you can, you know, go to sleep or whatever. But at the risk of
it's
not
never
just
the workout.
being
I was just going to say, it's never the workout I wanted, but it's always the workout I needed.
Well, yeah, well, it's the workout you got, you know, and
So.
you can still check it off.
Yep.
But at the risk of being the show that doesn't just, or that just sits here and says, do better, be more awesomer, you know, some tips and tricks that I've used in the past. Here's one. Sometimes in those busy sections of life, it's difficult to carve out some time to do a lot of these things, or sufficient time to do a lot of these things. And you end up feeling rushed, like through your workout or, you know, your walk. Instead of going for your hour-long walk, you go for a 30-minute walk, and whatever it might be. You know, your reading time in the evenings, maybe you cut that in half because the day got away from you or something. So here's a technique that I used once upon a time. I really enjoyed my drive home from Mountain Home into the town. It was about 25 minutes door to door. And I would roll the windows down in my truck and turn on classical music. And I know that sounds dumb, but dude, just the fresh air coming through the truck at 60 miles an hour and listening to just musical instruments. And I didn't know who the fuck it was or what they were playing or whatever, but you know what? It was therapeutic, man, because it wasn't, I think there's a time and a place for heavy metal music or, hip hop or whatever it is that get you going and get your blood flowing. I mean, you should see my workout playlist, dude. It's very eclectic. But something about just rolling the windows down and putting on a classical music station, it just, I don't know, man, it brought me back to center for a little bit. And that 25-minute drive from the parking lot to home kind of got me in a different headspace, so that when I walked through the door, I was ready for what was on the other side of it.
Yeah, you use it as a time to decompress.
If I would have brought the headspace that I was in at work and brought that to the front door, it would have been a different interaction with the people in the house. So that allowed me, close to a half hour to just kind of woo-saw a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to the importance of just trying some different things, because you may be surprised what works.
Exactly.
And then if you have different, several different things in your toolkit, when your day gets interrupted and maybe you didn't get that time you wanted, well, now you can make it up a little bit by doing, rolling the windows down in the truck and putting some classical music on, so that you have that decompression point before you walk through the door and have to show up as dad. So
nearly 8 billion people on the planet have cell phones now in their pocket, and not a lot of people utilize the go to sleep function on their cell phones. I love the go to sleep function, man. At 9:15 every night, every device that I have connected through my my Apple password, everything goes black. It gives me a 1-minute warning. At 9:14, it says, you're about to go to bedtime. Here's your bedtime reminder. And then at 9:15, all the screens just go black, dude. And of course you can override it, but that's not the point, right? The point is, hey, that's my daily reminder to start to wind down,
time
man.
to unplug.
Maybe turn the TV off, put the phone away, maybe grab the book, or go take my shower, whatever it is, wherever I'm at that particular time. But it's a reminder for me to take care of myself, to do the things that I need to do to get ready for the next day, take care of myself mentally, kind of wind down, that charge down, decompression time before my head hits the pillow. And dude, I can tell you, man, Katie's so jealous of me because I'm the type of dude that when my head hits the pillow,
I'm the same way.
Within 5 minutes, I'm out.
Gone. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's a testament to putting out so much energy during the day, managing that energy right up until that last minute, and then having a proper bedtime ritual, I think, really, really helps that.
It makes a difference for sure. Yeah. And then I think exercise is important, right? Trying to get 150 minutes a week, if you can, of exercise in is what they say. Because it helps so many things, right? It helps your personal health, your stamina. It helps your sleep routine, right? It helps your sleep quality. There's so many things that you can do, and maybe you need to look at some unhealthy habits, maybe things that you do to wind down now. If you need a couple of beers to relax at night, that may not be helping your sleep quality the best, right? That might be something that you need to adjust. Not to say that you can't do it on occasion, but you just got to look at some of those things and try to figure out what's going to work for you, because you'd be surprised, and it takes time. All these things do. They take time, consistency, and effort. But, if you have some routines that aren't very beneficial, whether it's staying on the phone or, maybe you don't even have a wind down routine that you've created, it may take you a couple of weeks to get into the habit pattern of doing that. But I guarantee you will see results. You'll probably feel better in the morning when you wake up if you can get yourself into some kind of routine.
Well, I was talking to somebody last night about the consistency piece of it. And I was like, dude, you've been doing what you're doing for 60 days, and I can already see a difference on you. Imagine if you did that for a year.
Yeah.
Right. Just keep it up. Gym 4 times a week, try to eat a little bit better, and one thing that we miss a lot that I don't think we talk about enough, though, is just proper hydration, especially down here in Phoenix. And it's difficult to maintain, and I'm not just talking about chugging a bunch of water, getting the electrolytes in there and the sodium, the potassium, the magnesium, all these little the micros that you guys like to bean count over there. But that's important, man. And that's going to help you be restful when you do rest.
Yeah.
It's going to help you recover. It's going to help your body be ready for the next day. So don't miss out on those little things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How about practicing a little gratitude or mindfulness around the people and events? I think that's, we were talking about self-care, man. I think that's huge, dude. I'm not consistent enough about it. I need to put up a reminder in my room to spend 5 minutes a day. Just, some guys get into this routine of they get up, they make their coffee, and they just stand there for 5 minutes and they name 3 things that they're grateful for.
Yeah.
That technique's been thrown out there. Or right before you go to bed, right before you turn the lights out, name 3 things that you're grateful for. And I'm not that consistent about it, but I do try to take time occasionally to go, you know what, man, I'm in a good place. I'm happy. I'm blessed.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that is really good for your mental health.
It is, because it focuses you on the positive and not the negative, right? It gives you a good outlook.
Yeah, that's a good
going
one.
into the day. And just for the ones out there, one thing that I did when I started this whole journey on my own was kind of after I had gone through and defined my personal values. Those things don't stick with you necessarily right away. And so I talked about how I like to take about 20 or 30 minutes in the morning to just kind of cage myself. Well, that's what I would do, man. I would get up in the morning. I'd make myself a cup of coffee. I'd sit down, and I had a little journal that I would open up, and there was a specific page I had on it, and I would go through and just kind of refresh myself on, okay, man, these are the big 2 to me, and here's kind of the things that been underneath those. And it was awesome because it really helped to kind of internalize and move that stuff from the back of my mind to the front of my mind.
Yeah.
And then as I'd walk through my day, and it became so repetitive that, I just knew them. And so when it came, and then during the day when it was like something comes up and it's like, okay, how do I want to show up? What's my response going to be to this? I could quickly fall back on that,
Yeah.
And part of what I did in that process too was the gratitude piece. Here's a couple things that I have to be grateful for today. The opportunities that I had in my life at the time, or the people that were in my life at the time, and just all kinds of different things. And so I think that's a great way to approach it. And you can do it at any point of the day too. It doesn't have to be in the morning. It's whatever works for you. But yeah, dude, I like that gratitude piece. That it really like what you're saying, that mindfulness exercise of just recognizing that it's probably not as bad as you think it is, and you got a lot to be grateful for.
Well, that's true, man. And things that I use, techniques that I use, not very dissimilar from what you use, but I'm more of a put signs up around the house kind of guy. I like a visual reminder.
Yeah, you do.
And I write on my mirror a lot. I write little messages to myself on the mirror. Maybe it's a to-do list or things that I need to remember to get to the store that day. Or, right now, the only thing that's written over there is it just says, make good decisions. That's it. Just make good choices, man, with your day. And it's very broad, but just by having that on the mirror, just by writing that up there, it's the same as what you were doing when you were sitting there having your coffee. Is you're bringing the subconscious to the conscious.
Yep.
You're bringing that shit to the front of your mind so that now you're thinking about it and you're being mindful about it. And if I put a sign up next to my chair over here that just said gratitude, all I would, every night before I turned the lights off, I would see that sign and I'd go, oh, let me take 30 seconds here. Just 30 seconds to think about the things that happened today that I'm very thankful for, and the things that I think are going to happen tomorrow that I'm going to be thankful for. And I don't know, man. I think when you get into a point where you can have some of these conversations with yourself in your own brain, man, I just think it brings you a lot of peace.
It does.
And those stressful days are still going to happen, but those little moments that you just spend thinking about, man, I just spent 16 hours getting my nuts crushed and 4 Monsters, a Snickers bar, and a can and a half of Skull chewing tobacco. But you know what, man? My truck cranked. I'm going to put on some classical music and I'm going to enjoy the nice cool air on the drive home, and it's those little things, man.
I agree. And what's cool about that too is, like you were talking about, when you start to have some consistency in that, then it has like that longer term effect, right? Where it gives you the ability to maneuver through those harder days with a little more with just better perspective, right? Because you realize that,
for sure.
the sky isn't falling and the world isn't coming to a crashing halt. And there's a lot of things to be grateful for, and that it'll pass, right? You'll get through it. You'll get it done. And then it'll be on to whatever the next thing is. So,
that's hard to have that perspective when you're younger, I think, because your experience base just isn't quite there. And you think it's all, like, this is the end of the world. This is the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me.
Sure.
And it's tough. It's easier for us, I think, to sit here and look back on it after, a career in the military and halfway through another career. That's just different. It's a different outlook that we have just from an experience level.
Yeah.
But if you're a younger guy, man, just trust me. Please just trust me, listen to me, and take my advice when I say this too shall pass.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably something better for you on the backside of it.
Hopefully,
that's been my experience
hopefully
most of the time.
Well, and that kind of leads me into one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and I meant to say this in the very beginning, but in all of these things, whether it's the work, your physical, your self-care, your mental faculties, whatever it is, give yourself a little grace.
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to get it right, and oftentimes you might get it right, but you could have done it better, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Give yourself a little bit of grace, and if you miss on one of them, just tomorrow's a new day, man.
Yeah, well, self-compassion is part of that mindfulness piece, right? It's that recognition of, maybe I didn't get it completely right, but you know what? I did it a little better than I did last time. Or maybe I didn't do it better than I did last time, but now I know what not to do, and I'm going to do it better next time, right? It's just, they're just learning points along the way, you guys, and don't get mired in it, because that's what happens, I think, especially when we're younger, is we're so singularly focused on a certain thing that if that thing doesn't work, it's like everything comes crashing down. And that's probably not the reality. We just haven't opened up the aperture enough to recognize, that there's a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of other opportunities out in front of us. So,
hey, life got busy and you missed going to the gym 3 days in a row. It's not the end. It's not over. Like, your physical fitness journey is not over. You didn't gain 50 pounds and get cancer and die. Like,
that's right.
You're okay, man.
And
you're okay.
It doesn't mean next week's going to be the same, right? You just got to you just got to keep nugging through.
Yeah. You're probably not even going to notice. In fact, maybe your body needed it.
Yeah. You might have needed the rest.
I inadvertently took 2 days off last week. Just, my schedule got away from me. I got a lot of excuses, no reasons, but I missed working out 2 days in a row. I wrote it down on my board and I was like, oh, fuck. But the next day when I went in, man, I felt like $1 million.
Yeah, sometimes
it
works that way.
Dude, I feel rested. I feel good. Like, got a really good run, a really good lift. Like, I don't know. I felt energized, and that's very atypical for me to miss 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
Very atypical, but I felt great.
It happens.
So it's not the end of the world, guys.
Nope.
Have a little bit of grace. And, the previous episode, we talked a little bit about perfection, and that kind of ties in with the grace piece of it. Like, guys, you're not going to be perfect. I'm certainly not. I fuck this up every day, but try to be consistent, try to get a little bit better, and
just try to do better.
Yeah. The important piece is you're making an effort to be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you were today.
That's right.
I think, and however you define that, success is user defined. So however you define that, that's fine. Go for it.
Yep. I agree.
Cool, man. You got anything else on your list?
I don't.
Awesome, dude. Well, then be the one.
Be the change.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website, and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.